Right then, welcome back. And today we have, I'm not going to call it a treat, I'm going to call it possibly the rarest motorcycle, or one of the rarest motorcycles ever made. The 1992 Honda NR. Now, to fully understand how, what and why this motorbike ever came into existence, we're going to do a little bit of a deep dive. And I've got loads of pictures and I've got loads of little bits of information. So if you're not interested and you don't want to listen, I'll flash up on the screen now at what point the setup video starts. There you go. And feel free to skip forward. But if you're interested and you want to learn some obscure facts about a very rare motorcycle, stay with me. So, Honda was a very, very small Japanese company that decided it was going to go racing and beat everybody. And from 1958 to 1967, in Grand Prix, which we now call MotoGP, they went racing with four-stroke motorcycles, and some of them were absolutely ridiculous, from singles, twins, triples, fours, fives, sixes, you name it. Some of them were doing 25,000 RPM in the 1960s. And then in the back end of 1967 into the 1968 season, Honda quit. They quit racing, just said, no, we've had enough, we're not doing it anymore, and decided to concentrate on automotive manufacturing. Now, the catalyst for this was basically the FIM, the governing body of motorcycle racing, said for the 1968 season, the top class Grand Prix bikes, which were 500 cc's, were going to be limited to 4 cylinders. None of these 5 or 6 cylinder absolute exotica that Honda were producing, and that basically favoured 2 strokes. And those rules essentially would stay the same until 2001, until 2 strokes kind of dropped out of favour. They're dirty, we need to go back to 4 strokes, and the 990s came in, and we all know what Mr. Rossi and Mr. Biaggi et al. All did on those bikes. So, in 1979, Honda said, well, do you know what? I've had enough of making cars and everything else. We've got a bit of spare money, a bit of spare time, and we're going to go racing again. And they threw everything and the kitchen sink at producing a 500cc 4-stroke Grand Prix machine, which was this, the NR 500. And this was a 500cc V4 that went far beyond anything that anyone had ever seen before. It was so technologically advanced that they genuinely, one, didn't know what they were doing, but two, and I say that as in they weren't quite sure they were going in the right direction, and two, it just caused problems. It had a monocoque chassis to lower the centre of gravity. They were using 16-inch wheels instead of 18-inch wheels. Bear in mind, 16-inch wheels were the absolute standard in racing at all levels for a long, long time. This was to lower gyroscopic forces for the smaller wheels. One of the Honda engineers worked out that over a given circuit on the perfect lap, the 16-inch wheel and tyre combination was X number of metres faster due to lower it was just mental what they were working out. But it was the engine. It was the engine that not only pushed the boundaries of the rule book, but it also pushed the boundaries of what was possible. So, it was basically a 4-cylinder V8 engine. A what? Right, I'll stick a picture up now. That is, or purports to be, the NR 500 engine. Oval pistons, well, oval, the kind of oblong pistons with round corners. So what Honda did was took a V8 and the bits between pistons 1 and 2 in the left-hand bank, they just coloured the gaps in, basically, and they made a 32-valve V4 with 8 spark plugs, 8 conrods, and some of the weirdest, most complex piston rings that you could ever see. For a lot of years, whilst they were developing this engine, and it came back a few times, and we'll talk about them later on, the engineers wouldn't let anyone near the piston rings. And I've got a little treat for you later. I went on a training course and I managed to get a picture of something, but we'll bring that up. But yeah, they invested a vast amount of money. They produced 250cc turbo versions, they produced bigger versions, smaller versions. They were determined it was going to work, but it didn't. They pushed on for a few years, but it gave up. It was a flop. It was either quick and blew up, or it just wasn't fast at all. They didn't seem to be able to find a middle ground, and they just gave up on it. Or so we thought. Secretly, they were still working on it, and in 1987 they rolled this absolute monster out of the truck at the 24 Hours of Le Mans, and they were fast. They were really, really quick. They got second place in qualifying. Yes, it blew up in the race, apparently due to an incorrectly tightened crank hub assembly or something an engineer said many, many years ago. But it had planted a seed about V4s. Bear in mind the RC30 and a few other niceties with the V4 engines were floating about at the time, but they were just conventional V4s, not oval pistons. But a lot of the technology trickled down. We'll come on to that at the end. So Honda had turned up in 1987 with this 165 horsepower V4 revving to 15 and a bit thousand RPM, absolutely ripping the place up. And then it just vanished. They've tried another couple of races in various places, but nothing that got massive publicity. It's very hard to find out any information. You go on Wikipedia and Google and bits and bobs, but there's nothing that people wish to say is concrete, or they did this or they did that or the other. And where did it all end up? Well, in 1992, we got this. The Honda NR. A lot of people refer to it as the NR 750 just because most bikes have some sort of capacity on them, but it's not. It's the Honda NR. The 750 has been added as a bit of an urban myth and legend. Production numbers wise, some say 300, some say 700. There's a lot of figures in between. I don't know. I've seen 2 up for sale ever in the time I've been interested in motorcycles, both for 6 figures, and that was the problem with it. £36,500 in 1992, or just over £80,000 in today's money, adjusted for inflation and everything else, which is what, $105-ish thousand and about 100,000 euros. I'll flash the figures up on the screen. That was expensive. 5 times as much as Honda's premium flagship bike at the time. Now, premium flagship, was that the Fireblade? Was it the VFR 750? Was it something else? I don't know. I couldn't really find out what they meant by premium flagship. But anyway, 5 times the cost of the next most expensive bike in the range. So what did you get? Well, for the same price as a smaller boat, you got 125 horsepowers at 14,000 RPM from that oval pistoned V4. Now, in the game, it sounds like a flat plane crank, but I can't really find anything on the firing order that would suggest that it is either a conventional crank or a crossplane crank, but it sounds very flat plane cranky. You got the best suspension and brakes available, you got a single-sided swing arm, you got underseat exhausts a la the Grand Prix bikes, you got part carbon fibre bodywork. In 1992, you got struts that reached forward from the tank and the tailpiece, as per that picture, are all one piece. There's no seam, it's just one piece of bodywork, and the lights and the exhaust and everything are in there. You got carbon arms that reach forward from the tank to support the screen, and the screen was titanium coated. I didn't even know that was a thing. I knew it was a funny colour, but I just thought it was like a fancy visor, but apparently it was titanium coated. Now, sounds exotic, sounds expensive. Many, many moons ago, I was lucky enough to go on a Honda training course when I was working for Honda as a motorcycle salesman. And they had an NR 750 piston with conrods, and there's a picture of it there, and piston rings and everything. And how on earth did they come up with the idea for that? I don't know. I genuinely don't know. It was the most mental piece of metal with the conrods and everything else. And if you look in the background, there's a piston from a CR250 motocross bike, and we were talking about the coatings on pistons and piston rings and bits and bobs and everything else, and just the difference, the absolute difference in the way the metal was, and you could just tell that it was on a completely different planet. But anyway, why did Honda do it? Well, A 4-stroke engine, and I'm not saying this out of the knowledge that I possess, it's just from research that I've done looking for this. A 4-stroke engine is apparently limited by the amount of air, so the amount of power it produces, it's limited by the amount of air and fuel you can put through it, i.e. the combustion flow. So more air and fuel equals more power. But combustion flow, the flow of air and fuel, is limited by the valve area, so the amount of space you have to open and close valves, and that is also limited by the bore or piston surface area of that cylinder. So a round piston, you either get lots of little valves or 1 or 2 big valves, depending on what you want to do. So if you take a V8 and merge 2 of the pistons together, you create not just double the surface area of the 2 pistons, you're also filling in the bits in between that have got a straight edge rather than a round edge. So you get over twice the surface area to put valves in, so you get more than twice the amount of combustion flow. That's how Honda managed to get those bikes making as much power as they did. Still with me? Good. Right. Honda spent a lot of money on that, a lot of money. And how did they claw back the costs? Well, they didn't. But they did graft a massive amount of what went into the NR series onto the 1995 VFR 750. There's one I prepared earlier. And if we put it side by side next to a picture of the NR, you can see, and I'll put loads of little circles on everything, you can see where the design cues have been used. You can see the vents, the strakes on the side. You can see where the intake is for the 750, used to be a spotlight. You can see the line down the side of the fairing where the frame is. You can see the tailpiece where the exhaust came out on the NR. That's where the indicators are on the VFR 750. Single-sided swing arm, 5-spoke wheel, so on and so forth. So you can see there is a massive amount of crossover between those 2 models, and Honda obviously used the NR as an influence for the design of the 750. Now, I've owned a VFR 750, a 996 model, and it was one of the most capable bikes I've ever been on. Yes, it wasn't the fastest thing in the world, absolutely not. It made about 103 horsepower at the absolute most. But my God, it was absolutely rock solid. It made a fantastic noise from the gear-driven V4, and it was just fantastic to ride. Everything worked. It was much better, much better than a lot of bikes that I've had much later on. A lot of stuff in the mid-2000s was absolutely shocking compared to the 96 VFR 750. And one quote I did come across was from a Honda engineer while I was doing all the research for this, and he said no matter how much a VFR 750 cost, it was worth 3 times as much. And someone asked him for clarification on that. He said it's not just been designed as a VFR 750. He said in 1978, when we went racing with the NR 500, all that technology, all that experience, all that knowledge through the NR 750 Endurance Racer and the NR road bike, he said all of that has trickled in to us making the VFR 750 and the RC30. He said so it's worth 3 times as much as it actually costs because of the amount of development work that's gone into it, which may explain why the bike's so good. But there you go. The Honda NR, genuine Unobtanium, a genuine unicorn in the motorcycling world. Yeah, I was going to say something funny, or try to be funny, say a bike's so rare that it makes the Desmo Sedici look like a C90, but it felt like I was being a bit of an arse. So rather than say it as a joke, I'll say it as a bit of self-beratement. But anyway, back to Ride 4. So where do we go? Well, first up, we went to Okayama GP, medium front, soft rear. And I put a setup in. It was okay, it wasn't quite right. The racing was absolutely fantastic. The NR has a front end and a chassis. I'm going to say something stupid. I'm going to say you can tell that it's been developed from a Grand Prix bike. You cannot. It's a digital interpretation of a motorcycle that very few people have ridden. However, this thing handles so well. It is absolutely unbelievable. It took a bit of time to tweak the setup, but we'll come to that. The front end and the brakes and the corner speed and the composure of the chassis is just absolutely fantastic. Slap it on its side and it just stays there. It does not care. The racing, as I said, was fantastic. the battles with other bikes. I mean, coming through here, turn 9, we get overtaken, we go back through one, and there's a little bit of a naughty nudge. I'm sorry, Mr. Fireblade Rider, but that was a bit filthy on my part. I'm putting so much pressure to the front of the bike. We are absolutely boiling the front tyre, and we ended up in a 4-way fight with an MV, a GSXR 1000 I think it is, and a Hayabusa, however we say it. And it was just, I mean, I know I always say I'm not going to put the replays up, but I will put the replays up on this one. It was absolutely mega. It was a little bit dirty on my part, but I really wanted to win. Only thing that I found a bit weird, I mean, look at this up the inside. That is a horrible corner. Turn 8 at Okayama is a horrible corner. I thought about going up the inside of the hedge abuser then. Out the final corner, there's a little bit of a touch, but we did a 129.2, which was 120th, but it's only got a rating of S824, which I didn't think was too bad for a first go out of the box. And then trying to mix it up, not trying to go to the same tracks all the time. We went to VIR South on a medium soft. I added 2 clicks to everything except preload on the front end. So spring rate, compression, rebound, everything got 2 clicks. It seemed to sort out the front end, but it gave us a bike that wanted to turn so tight compared to just one race ago that I was running off the inside of the course all the time. So I had to adjust, and this is the problem with only doing 5 or 6 races. There's so much adjustment required going from bike to bike, especially going from an endurance bike to something like this, which does not have a massive amount of poke down the straight, so everything's on the front end. But that's a 1098R, and we're about to absolutely take the piss out of him. See you later, mate. And the NR didn't even flinch. Yes, he's got a lot more grunt, but a little bit of weaving down the straight sorted that out. And we ended up on a 109.138, which would have put us 20th, which for a bike that doesn't have a massive amount of go, I was happy with that. The little asterisks, I'm going to have a go on the leaderboards at some point, and I'll let you know how I get on. Where do we go next? Well, we went to UMC Outer. Why? VAR doesn't put a massive amount of energy through the tyres. It's okay. UMC, big long straight, massive pressure on me to carry loads of corner speed and take the piss through the corners. So we're in 12th. And this bike, yes, there's a bit of contact, but it's nothing. It's only a bit of fairing slapping. It does not care. It just does not care. You pick a line on this thing. We've got to set up to the point where we're starting to get a little bit of drift on the gas as well, which I don't mind. I quite like it moving about. But we've gone from 12th to 6th against bikes that have a lot more pace, all because of the absolute stonking chassis this bike's got. Through the chicane at the top of the hill. Yeah, that was a bit filthy, wasn't it? He's had a bad day. Sorry, mate. I'll buy some new sliders. By the end of the first lap, we're up to 2nd, and now, well, this is the problem. The gap to the leader is just going up and up and up and up and up. So it was pressure. It's not probably going to be the greatest race in the world to watch, to take part in, to actually race. It was mega. It was absolutely mega, because it was just all about corner speed. We are getting some great heat through the tyres. We've got pretty even wear. The front's slightly warmer. Even in the draft, I'm not getting total on. The leader is just absolutely leaving us. I had a go in the double left-hander about a third of the way through the lap, went in too late on the brakes, and he ended up repassing me. This is the corner for this bike. The change of direction, absolutely rock solid, doesn't care, and you pull out the best part of half a second for being half a second behind. And you know what? It was one of the best races I've ever had. Not for action, just for this motorcycle making my life easy. We did a 146.5, which would have put us 109th, but close to the top 100 on a bike that's 20, 25, 30 miles an hour slower down the straight. I was happy with that. That was one of the best races I've had there. So after UMC, I thought, nah, we need something niggly. I need to make sure that 1, it not only holds a good line, but 2, it changes direction quick. Cadwell Woodlands, absolutely fantastic. You've got a short straight hairpin up over the mountain, then you're into Hall Bends, and it's left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right, and it's just quick fire corners. So it's a really good track for tuning the handling, the direction changes of the bike. The bike was getting a bit flighty. We were starting to push a little bit, and we were getting some good energy through the tyres. So we were really working the chassis. But look how smooth it is, changing direction. It just, I mean, that's a what, a Yamaha FZ1 naked in front, and we were just all over it. Yeah, we didn't necessarily win the race, but that's not what this is about. It's about getting the setup in. We did a 40.8, which would have put us 28. So again, top 30 on a big fat 750 that weighs 200 odd kilos with not a massive amount of grunt. I'm happy. I mean, it's just a good bike. So, what track would you not think would suit this? What track would you think would not suit this bike? That was a mouthful. Portimao Car. It's all about power. Yes, there's a lot of time to be had from a bike that handles well, but this track requires some serious grunt. So I thought, I'm going to punish myself, and I'm going to go here, I'm going to see what happens. Let's see if I can use this bike's chassis to get to the front of this race. And it was feisty. There was a lot of sticking up the inside, there was a lot of late moves and diving past people. I turned the anti-wheelie down to 0 briefly, sharp changed my mind on that one after some small change came out the back of me. But again, it was a good race, there was pressure and it was a challenge to get back to the front, but we did it thanks to the leaders just there. They made a right mess through there, up into the top of the hill, turn 11, and then back down again. The front tyre, look at that front tyre, it got an absolute beasting. It was so warm by the end of it, you could feel the controller as soon as you turn into the corner, the controller was pushing straight to the side. But a 150.7, 24th at Portimao on an NR. 24th, I'll have a go at that on the leaderboards again, see where we can get that. So, we've mucked about, we've been all over the place, so I needed a track that I thought, I know this place, see what we can do. I went to Alton Foster's, again, it was an absolutely cracking race. I think I will probably put up the Okayama one, probably put up Portimao, probably put Alton as well. I'm not going to say I'm not going to go mad, because I will. I'll probably put them all up because I can't help myself. If I've got it, I might as well use it. But there we go. But yeah, corner speed, City. I'd not made any changes to the bike at all from when we did that couple of clicks on the front end. So we got it almost perfectly. We're still on a medium soft. The Panigale decided he didn't want to race anymore, and it was just going to play the blocker. You can see him coming off the gas, and then on the straights he wants to be a hero. And this was quite filthy all the way around the outside. I was quite proud of that. I thought it was quite a good move. And then on to the last lap, we've got Hayabusa and MV, I think it was, and again, just round the outside, absolute corner speed monster. Didn't win by miles, 1.5 seconds, but we did a 131.5. No, we didn't. We did a 56.5. My apologies, which would have put us 30th again on a bike that doesn't have a massive amount of power. Can you tell that I love this thing yet? I went to Kanto just to see if it would boogie on the wet track, because again it looks stunning as well, and just tried to have a bit of fun. No traction control, didn't run any traction on this at all through the races. Honestly, it's lacking about 25, 30, maybe it's a bit more horsepower, but it's just the straight bits, getting walloped down the straights. But look at the front end on this, underneath two bikes into the double right-hander at the back end of the circuits, turns 9 and 10. It was just unbelievable. Yes, it's warm in the front tyre, but we don't mind that. We don't mind that at all. End of lap 3, we didn't get any further up than 6th. The other bikes were just monstrous in a straight line. We did a 131.5, which would have put us 39th. But again, top 50. Yes, I know it's a track that I like, but it was an absolute pleasure. Honestly, one of the nicest bikes I've ever had to use. It is tricky, but we'll go through that now. So pros, great chassis. I know I mentioned it about a million times, and I have been known to exaggerate in the past. So yeah, great chassis, absolutely fantastic. You stick it on its side, it'll stay there. Loves corner speed, absolutely loves it. And the big thing for me is the bike is absolute unobtanium. Even if you were a multi-millionaire, you can't just go and buy one. You're going to have to find someone who's willing to let it go, and I can't imagine there's many people who are. Cons, it doesn't have a massive amount of power, and it's quite heavy. It's not a criticism, it's more of an observation. It is what it is. If you like a setup where you're not braking really deep into the corner, you're carrying corner speed, you will love this bike. And I've put sounds a bit meh. It's a flat plane crank V8 that's been turned into a V4, so when you're changing gear it's a bit burr. It doesn't really seem to change tone. It's almost a bit like a twin in that respect. There's not a massive amount of change, not like an inline 4 where you can hear it ripping up the revs and stuff like that. But I just love it because it's Unobtanium. I had genuine goosebumps using this thing. It was absolutely fantastic. Anti-wheelie 1, I've put 2 in brackets for the launch, so on the launch use 2, it'll fire off the line quite quick. It's not as good as the 1098, but it's not far off. Engine braking on 2 and 0 traction control. I did turn the anti-wheelie down to 1, sometimes 0, but I found that certain tracks would send it up over the back, and you'd end up almost firing yourself off. So anti-wheelie on 1 is probably the safest bet, and that's it. I hope you've enjoyed it. I know we went really deep at the start and technical, but I love that kind of stuff. Knowledge is power and power is love and all that bollocks. But yeah, anything that's tricky and special or a really rare bike, I'll do one of these. I know I didn't do it for the 999. I did a little bit, but not major, and the 1098. But yeah, I love it. I just love information and details. So if I can find stuff out, and I'll share it with you, and we'll do a deep dive. If you're not into it, I apologise, but I know that a lot of people are. We're all closet nerds for something, and mine is just a love of information. So there you go. But thank you. Thanks for watching. Thanks for liking. Thanks for commenting. Thanks for subscribing. And next up, what we're doing next, we're going to do... I think it's a 2008 ZX10 Phillip Island. Another endurance race. And that one's a belter. So there you go. Fingers crossed. I will see you next time. Take care. Stay safe. Peace.